If you want to be more effective in your work and in your life, and you'd like to have more confidence that you're meeting your intentions, this is where it begins. Welcome to Do Busy Right, helping you organize your information and manage your attention so that they work for you, not against you. We educate you and encourage you by discussing ways to be more effective, not more exhausted. Let's do busy right. Hi there. Today, I want to talk more about a concept that folks found pretty interesting in a previous discussion, and that's this idea of commonplace books. My goal here is to show you how a modern tool set, specifically Attention Compass, transforms the idea of a commonplace book from an overwhelming, scary kind of task into a practical and incredibly powerful exercise for knowledge workers in the modern world. This is especially valuable for those types, knowledge workers, consistently learning and figuring things out as we go along and trying to manage our personal information effectively, because the commonplace book and the methodology are great at capturing and organizing information. So by the end of this episode, you'll understand how implementing an attention compass can unlock benefits, solve common pain points, and truly enhance your ability to capture, leverage, and master your own unique knowledge through the concept of commonplace books. Now, on this podcast, I'm all about human flourishing. And I think a great way to flourish better is to cultivate great attention management. So if you'd like some help with that or just to chat about it, let me know. You can reach me at larry@dobusyright.com or hit me on LinkedIn. Quick review of commonplace books. The commonplace book was, and still is, I suppose, a bound physical notebook that people carried around with them to write down things. And this, of course, was historical during a time when paper was the primary tool, pencil, inkwells, the whole notion. Of course, there were no typewriters, copying capabilities, or any kind of electronic storage, of course. But a lot of people used them. Dwight Eisenhower used them. Thoreau used them. All these great thinkers back in the day used them. And so they're very useful. The idea was to collect your own knowledge set in a specific place so that you could easily get back to it and review it when you wanted to. And that's why they used bound books. Now, there are several challenges of this idea. We find it, I guess, particularly challenging in the modern world where our feeling is that time is so scarce. So I think that it's such a task that most people would not bother to even try to do it, not even attempt it. I mean, just imagine I hand you a blank notebook with, I don't know, 60 or 80 pages and, hey, make a commonplace book. That's going to be a tough lift. In addition, the result, the commonplace book itself, while possibly the best of breed at its time, now is beginning to show the cracks in that methodology, because finding things in a physical book is hard unless you're an expert book creator with a sophisticated indexing system. And even then, you got to create the index. And a useful topic index for a book is really difficult, especially if you try to be exhaustive. Electronic systems, on the other hand, can easily create concordances. Concordance is the notion of, it's a notion that typically you find around the Bible. And a concordance is an indication of every time a word is used and a reference to where it's used in the Bible. And that was originally created by hand back in the day, but now you get a computer and it's pretty straightforward to do something like that. An index does not have to be a concordance. An index should probably be a limited concordance. Finally, the challenges of the physical book. Physical storage is inherently limited compared to electronic storage. Well, it's inherently limited, period. But it's tiny compared to a now moderate amount of electronic storage space. So these things are challenging to us when we think about Commonplace books. So I think it's a very valuable tool. I see the challenge of trying to create it. And so one of the things that I want to do is explain how it can easily be created if you have the right personal information management structure in place. All right. Now, I'm talking about the attention compass. And so you've probably heard this. It's a modern personal information management system, task and information management. I usually put it on Evernote just because it's easy there. The core advantage of how Attention Compass is built in Evernote is that any piece of information can appear to be in multiple places at the same time. Now, this is something of a new concept in data storage. Most of us kind of intuitively think, well, why would I want to store 2 copies of something? And while that's not exactly what I'm saying, that's a valid question. So I said things can appear to be in multiple places at the same time. So there's a very robust system of building pointers to information in Evernote. And part of Attention Compass is how to use that system, how to structure it so that it's useful for you in your very own personal information management system. But it's still kind of counterintuitive, the idea. And it's because in the older computer world and in the physical world, extra copies take up extra space, and that means cost. Now, in the modern computing environment, extra copies would take up space, but there's near zero cost to that space. Okay. Now, there are other challenges of keeping multiple copies, but I think that's the biggest one. And so, however, if we could do that, then the creation of a Commonplace book would be easy because you'd capture a piece of information and then you'd utilize that information. And then you say, oh, that information would be incredibly helpful in my knowledge of, I don't know, learning AI, for example. And then you can just make it appear in the Commonplace book about learning AI space without having to make a copy or really without having to do a whole lot at all. Okay, you just create another point, so to speak. So you capture information as a core part of information of Attention Compass, and it goes into Evernote. And then you process it by making meaning. And the meaning that you make is typically utilized to assign tags to the note or the set of information. And that's the magic sauce is tags allow a single piece of information to be associated with multiple categories simultaneously. So you can easily add the category that is Commonplace book on AI. And then the note is automatically appears to be available in that space. So as an example, if you have Nana's homemade gingerbread recipe and you put it into a system with pointers, tags, a system like Attention Compass hosted on Evernote, then that recipe can be tagged for Nana, cooking, gingerbread, Christmas, new hobbies, recipes I like, versus recipes I haven't tried or recipes I've tried and don't like. So we can have all of these different areas with a pointer back to Nana's homemade gingerbread recipe. And so it becomes amazingly powerful once this information is captured to point it out to all these different locations. The reason it's powerful is because that eliminates the struggle of trying to decide the quote one perfect place to store the data. And that's such a challenging problem, and it takes so much time that we usually just do a poor job of it and we just fling it somewhere. Okay. And it's difficult for us because putting it in one folder, which is our mental image, excludes it from all the other folders. So instead, with tags, information seamlessly accumulates. These pointers seamlessly accumulate. And then our information shows up where we need it. It's almost like the information, the particular piece of information, is magnetic to its location. We just think, well, what do I think this is about? Oh, this is about recipes I'd like to bake. Bingo. Later, you go, hey, what recipes would I like to bake? And you access that list, and Nana's gingerbread recipe right there, front and center. It's not hard. Okay. So if we then look back to commonplace books, modern commonplace books that are enabled by the kind of electronic information storage that Attention Compass teaches you to do. That was a mouthful. Anyway, this kind of information management makes commonplace books much easier. So now we can look at the value of commonplace books. What pain points are solved? Okay. So Evernote has solved the challenge of, wow, it would be tough to make a commonplace book. So specifically, okay, commonplace books help solve the notion of wasting high value time and attention recreating conclusions that you already thought. Here's what I mean. We humans often revisit information that we've stored previously, and a lot of times we wonder, what was I thinking when I stored that or did it or wrote that? And if we create the commonplace book and we store the thought with a pointer to the commonplace book, then we're remembering why it was important and what we were thinking when we created it. Okay. So then all of this capture process helps you, if you have a piece of information, it helps you capture your conclusions about that information and put them where you'll see them again. Okay. Even if it might change later. Right. So this avoids the waste of needing to redraw conclusions or think through the recreation, the addition to a commonplace book, right? So for example, if your commonplace book is thoughts about books I've read, okay, it's easy. All you got to do is have a note and it says, hey, the book I'm reading is The Organized Mind. And you make notes about that book and you put it out there in the commonplace book location. So it's easy. And you draw conclusions about the data right there with the data. It's sort of metadata. So it makes it simple. So another challenge that commonplace books can solve now that they're easy to make, it solves the difficulty of capturing and leveraging learning that we acquire beyond our formal education. And here's what I mean. We know many people, even within formal education, but definitely outside of formal education, struggle to retain and refer back to what they've learned. So they hear information, they struggle to turn it into knowledge. Okay. So a commonplace book, the idea of a commonplace book can act as a sort of a second brain storage. So it can be out there storing things for you so that your brain doesn't have to be occupied with it at all times. Okay. So we're out here beyond formal education and we're trying to learn something. It's like, okay, well, when I was in school, I had a notebook and I was taking tests that reinforces learning, blah, blah, blah. But now I'm not in that world anymore. So how do I learn this information? How do I take the information that I received in this training and turn it into knowledge or change behavior? Okay. So we can capture and leverage that information. We can show it back to ourselves. We can figure out easy ways to review the notion of the stuff that we were looking at. So it allows us to really distill this down, coalesce learning into a useful reference work for yourself and even potentially for others. So now you can go into a professional training and using your standard tool set of personal information management, you can capture the information that's presented to you in such a way that it flows into your system naturally, automatically, without high cost. Now that kind of fades into the next benefit because when we're adults learning, oftentimes there's a lack of textbook, particularly if it's self-learning, which a lot of career growth kinds of things are, is on the job learning. Well, if you go to a conference, it's likely that somebody's going to hand you a notebook of some variety. Often it's a 3-ring binder or something with the slides printed out or whatever that looks like. It's usual and customary. But when you're learning on your own about the things that interest you that nobody else can teach out there, then you don't get that. So this makes it easy to create your own textbook so that you can go back and review. And as we said in the previous episode, the notion of a textbook and a commonplace book are not that far apart. A textbook has more formalized, more elaborate pedagogy, teaching mechanisms than was typical for a commonplace book, but the information is the information. So when we're learning on our own, we need to create a textbook because that's where we go back and we refer back as we're recalling the information and making sure it's deeply encoded into our knowledge set so that we can use it. So, for an example, let's say you're in the business of helping people or businesses with their websites and you improve those things. You go to them and you understand how to see what it is they want and how to then enact those features and needs into the web page presentation. Okay. So these people that do this, the website specialists, need to articulate the unique how and why to connect with clients. Okay. And this is a complex and nuanced notion that only the specialists themselves can define. So what we want to think about is, okay, well, here's a notebook that I created for a client in the insurance industry. Oh, look, here's a new client in the insurance industry. Can I take what I had before and figure out how to apply it in this new instance without having to reinvent the wheel a whole lot? So that's the whole deal, right? So that's what a commonplace book can do for you, particularly if you can make them easily as portable as electronic data is, all these ideas. And then that commonplace book then serves you going forward. And creating it is an easy, low overhead exercise. When we have a commonplace book tangible or intangible, a compendium, if you will, right? A collection of thoughts about a particular subject, it enhances our sense of craftsmanship and expertise about that subject. If we create a commonplace book about a topic that we have learned on our own, then we have literally, quote, written the book, unquote, on that topic. And you can think, wow, I am comfortable with this knowledge set because look at what I created. I filled up 65 pages with knowledge about this. So surely I know something. And that's a confidence boost. And it helps us with our sense of craftsmanship and expertise, our sense of, oh, I must be, heck with imposter syndrome, I must be pretty good at this because I was able to write a book about it. Now, getting the book published is a separate question. Okay. But just thinking about, yeah, that's my book on, right? Just show it to somebody. Finally, this notion of creating commonplace books. Well, if it's easy, it can also be fun. So there's a certain class of people, including me, who find the process of creating these pockets of collected knowledge. I find that to be fun and engaging. And I imagine that as an asset for people who need that kind of help, as an asset for my family members who may want to know what I was thinking about, or maybe not. But that to me is a fun activity. Okay, organizing knowledge in these ways. All right, so let's think about some more practical ideas, practical implementation. So an example of the kinds of commonplace books you can create once it becomes easy to organize the information in these ways. For example, and we sort of alluded to this earlier on the web page example, you can create project-based commonplace books. Project-based collections of information that is in your personal information store and maybe things only you know. So the way this would work is as you engage in a project and you find yourself capturing information about that project, then it's pretty easy to create pretty easy. It's, pardon me, stupid easy to create a dedicated project tag. Okay. I teach from time to time, usually one class per term, and I have an instance of a commonplace book for each time I've taught the same course. Oh, here's the course in winter of 2024. Oh, here's the course in spring of 2025. And I can collect it up that way. Okay. And then over time, I can even look through those collected instances and glean deeper, broader lessons about what to do when teaching this material. Now, as we capture these materials, and I'm talking about tasks you need to perform, notes, external resources like website links, emails, the whole 9 yards, so they all flow into your system and get tagged with that project tag, along with potentially other relevant descriptive tags. And it creates an ongoing record of the project. So an interior designer is working on a project. They could tag their notes, their photos, task lists, design inspirations, perfect pillow shape. And that way those things get easier later and they can be very precisely organized if need be. And it could be, design project for a programming firm. Okay. So then you collect that up. And then the next time you see a programming firm, you go, look my work for a similar company. Oh, look at the ergonomics that I did for programs, this sort of thing. Yeah. So This will allow you to refer back to be re-inspired. And also, should you choose, to critically assess what went well or poorly, and then that informs future projects. An example, back to our interior designer. She says, ooh, the last time I worked in a doctor's office, it didn't turn out well. I would like to avoid that. Let me go back and access that previous knowledge set and begin to evaluate what I might have done that caused problems there so that I can not repeat my own mistakes. Yeah, I ask you, how valuable would that be? So we bring forward lessons learned, both positive and negative, because we've captured this information and we can get back to it and find it fairly easily. Another idea is, because the Commonplace book is really just a subset of your larger overall electronic personal information store, you will actually access it. Okay. This, as contrasted to physical books, where indexing is a challenge. Okay. Attention Compass allows for much easier indexing and retrieval. Your brain's indexing capacity is limited, but its associative and innovation capacity is huge, which makes a digital index crucial for retrieval. What I mean by this is back to Nana's gingerbread recipe. Okay? You might not remember the phrase Nana's, listen to me, gingerbread recipe. I can't even remember it. I said it 15 minutes. You might not remember that phrase. You remember gingerbread. You remember, oh, Nana had that baking recipe that I really liked. Go look under Nana. Okay. So you can find this all these different ways with much easier indexing and retrieval. You can create an index item in the project folder. So you can create an item specifically that is, hey, index of this thing. And it's a topical index where you go, ooh, to see, communications with the VP, here's a link to that information, that information, that information. And this is fairly straightforward and easy to do. So this is back to utilizing the information and touching it and using it as a raw material. It's, hey, I had this idea. What did I associate it with? Let me think about that in some way to really tangibly do that. Okay. Now, I will say the attention compass can store a vast amount of information. Okay. I've been using it for well over 12 years now. My system contains 28,000 notes, roughly. Now, some of those notes are small. Some of them contain documents, PDFs. Some of them contain spreadsheets. Some of them are long. Several of them contain different draft versions of my dissertation, the actual Word doc. So those would be relatively large. And so all of this, 28,000 notes. Can you imagine searching a 28,000 page book? Or even trying to create an index for one? That would be a heroic task. But if you create it a little bit at a time on the fly, then it becomes so much more straightforward. And that's what we do, is we build that habit into our workflows. Now, I will talk about something because it's on my mind lately, and it's on everybody's mind at the time I'm recording this. So we'll talk about the notion of AI. And does AI amplify attention compass and vice versa? Are the two things better together than they are apart? And the answer is almost definitely yes. I will tell you that there are lingering, not even lingering, that there are significant concerns about data safety and these kinds of issues with AI. I think those will get resolved or go away, or at least will become accustomed to them, like using the internet. But anyway, not worrying about that right now. So the database that AI can access on your behalf, your database, is much more robust if you've been using attention compass. I've got 28,000 notes that I can conceivably point AI to and say, hey, AI, what does this show I was thinking about? What's the big picture theme here? Name 5 big picture themes that run throughout the majority of these pieces of information. And that's an amazingly valuable thing that is only accessible to us if we've stored our information in electronic means. So that's useful. You can begin to use AI not to give you external information, but to help you understand your own knowledge set, to help you manipulate and craft new knowledge out of the existing knowledge, to help you bump concepts together that you hadn't thought of bumping together before, and really grow that knowledge set as represented by your own accumulated information. I'll give you an example. In particular, at the time of this recording, Notebook LM is something that I'm using. And it's a learning module, and it actually is from Google, and it allows you to provide your own sources to the AI. So sources can be audio files, PDFs, text, the whole thing for the AI to consume and then discuss with you. So I use Notebook LM to create a data store of the recordings of this podcast. I fed into it 60 hours of audio content, and it took me about an hour, and it took Notebook LM about another hour to more or less completely digest that information. 60 hours of audio. Now, you think, hey, Larry, it'd probably be a good idea for you to listen back through your podcast and look for themes and look for things that maybe you glossed over. Or maybe there's some hidden gems that you didn't highlight sufficiently, all this kind of thing. Well, unlike you, I don't have 60 hours to sit down and do that. I don't have time. Secondly, I don't have the focus and attention necessary to do that. And absent attention compass, I don't have a tool to capture the insights anyway. So I use these sources, 60 hours of audio content, and put it into Notebook LM. The promise of Notebook LM is that that information is insulated from the rest of the training data, internet stuff that AI usually uses as a source of facts under research. So Notebook LM doesn't tell me what people generally think about productivity and personal information management. It tells me what I think about productivity and personal information management. And that's very valuable because I think I've created something different here. I think I've thought about these things in different ways such that we've arrived at a better solution. think about how challenging that would have been, even with audio recordings, say cassette tapes. How challenging would that have been? Even with transcripts of 60 hours of audio, I would suggest that 60 hours of audio from me, and I've got some data here, would probably produce a 900-page Word doc. Can I comprehend a 900-page Word doc? Can I sort the information? Probably not. So the whole process of allowing AI to leverage the unique knowledge that I've created in the world and leverage it for my purposes only, without big concerns about other people monkeying with my data. Do I have to trust Google to protect my information? Yeah, I do. But if you use Google Docs and Google Sheets and Gmail, you're already trusting Google to protect your data. So that means I can leverage this knowledge. And that's really the notion of a Commonplace book. Then if we look at this benefit of AI integration, and you're able to point an AI at your own data store, then there's benefits here, okay? The AI can help you identify gaps in your content or suggest new research topics. I've explored this idea, and one of the results is this podcast. AI said, hey, I looked at your content, and while you introduced this idea and that idea, you haven't fully explored it. So it would be useful to fully explore it. Well, I had people ask me questions. Well, what else about Commonplace books? It sounds like an interesting idea. What else can you tell us? And I just didn't know what else to say. And so AI prompted me to develop a podcast in this more detailed example of the use of Commonplace books under the new data model storage, under the new personal information management paradigm that is represented by Attention Compass. I did another test, and I pointed Notebook LM at this data set and asked it to create a 25,000 word manuscript. And that's, call it 115 or 120 page book in the, shelf book size. I don't know what it is, 9x5 or whatever. Right? A reasonably sized paperback book, 25,000 words. And I produced that in less than a dozen working hours using AI pointed at my data, my thinking that I had created and put in a format that AI could reach. That was not my intention when I did it. But here we are. So this is, just think about the new things you can do with your own knowledge set. We talk about Commonplace books, and that's a great introduction here, because I think a Commonplace book is important. But we could even, if we're managing our personal information properly, and perhaps we hook up AI, then we could explore, I've thought a lot about baking. Hey, AI, go collect up from my own information store my thoughts about baking, the recipes that I've probably tried, and the results that I've gotten from them. Because, and here's the trick, I'd like to write a cookbook. How simple would that be? How straightforward would that be? It's all because you've already recorded all this data and all this information. Now, you don't have to produce a podcast to do it. Attention Compass implementation will do just fine. And I can show you how, if you choose to liberate information from your Attention Compass implementation in Evernote into a format that makes it straightforward for AI to consume. Okay, the power that you have with and through your information captured and organized in reasonable ways is enormous, and it's multiplied by AI. So that's the pitch. Commonplace books in the Attention Compass personal information management model are great. They're soulmates. Now you add in some AI at your choice, and you can really begin to do these amazingly powerful things that enhance your knowledge set and your career as a knowledge worker. So recap I think it's incredible. So we'll recap the advantages we've discussed by having the mentality of cultivating commonplace books within our personal information management store, preferably an Attention Compass personal information management store. You can avoid wasting time and attention on redrawing conclusions that you already drew. You can remember the previous conclusion rather than having to think it through again. And oh, by the way, thinking it through again is just as error-prone and difficult as it was thinking it through the first time. So you can trap that stuff. You can keep it where you can lay your hands on it again later. You can effectively leverage learning that's acquired from outside of formal education, both education that's not in the formal system and other types of education that perhaps are not even considered education. Okay. You can distill, you coalesce, you can make your information clump up into a reference work that's absolutely invaluable for yourself. These project notebooks become very easy, but it's project notebooks integrated with all the other stuff. All of that turns into this referable, unique knowledge set. And creating your own textbook, so to speak, fosters a really profound sense of craftsmanship, expertise, and authority in your field. And yes, for many of us, it's actually fun. In part because it's easy. So the critical takeaway here is that if you've implemented Attention Compass, creating commonplace books becomes easy enough that you will actually do it. In fact, you can hardly avoid doing it if you're categorizing your information within an Attention Compass implementation. And if you do that, there's no doubt that you'll gain these immense benefits that we've talked. I stun people when they hear about the capabilities that this system, often plus AI, allow for me to do. People are like, you can actually know. So some of it's funny. I just am open with people and I tell them I know every time I've been to my dry cleaners in the last 4 or 5 years. I know the date of every visit and the business that I conducted there in my dry cleaners. It's an outgrowth. It wasn't hard. In fact, it would have been harder to not collect it based on the way I work and my workflows. So, strange things you can do, but strange abilities, we learned this from X-Men. Strange abilities, even if you didn't wish for them, can be amazingly powerful. So using AI to query and generate content, I tell people I wrote a 2,500 page book in less than 12 hours. And they go, well, AI wrote the book. And I go, well, not really. Let me explain the nuance. And they're just shocked. There's no telling how many books I can get out of this podcast. Just my imagination is the limitation. So an attention compass implementation is more than just a tool. It's a foundational step that'll give you powers you didn't know you could have or even needed. And I know it sounds mystical. I know it does. Trust me. It's not mystical. It's not magic. It's the power of a good personal information management system. It's what this stuff is designed to do for us. We just don't know it yet. Okay. So it just demonstrates how effective these tools are. And the most effective thing is to elevate your personal information management and thus your intellectual output, your productivity as a knowledge worker, to produce new ideas. Okay. Hey, if this has interested you or intrigued you at all, and you want to find out more about creating your own personal information store, starting to create this kind of commonplace book, implementing your own attention compass, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to talk about this stuff. I hope you can hear the passion in my voice. And that passion is caused by me thinking about the skills that you'll have if you choose to take these steps with us in our community. So give me a shout. Love to chat about it or help you figure it out or help you improve your own tool set. I'm not hard to find. Again, email me, larry@dobusywright.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find there. I'll leave it there for now. This is Larry Tribble, Ph.D. Thanks for taking some time to improve your task and information management on the Do Busy Right podcast. The show is dedicated to helping you think about how to get better at working. And we do this by improving your attention and your focus. I believe that your work is not just about your job, but about all the tasks that you do to turn yourself, your environment, and your relationships into what you want them to be. What we're really talking about here is the underpinnings of becoming who you want to be. The primary way I help people is through coaching the attention compass process. Attention compass is 4 workflows and a tool set that support our information, task, and attention management. I help people with big goals to build habits that put them in a position to achieve. We do this by eliminating wasted time and wasted attention. If you'd like to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn or go to dobusywright.com for more information. Have a good week, more effective and less exhausted. Do Busy Right.